Welcome. Today I'm going to introduce you to Odelia, and she is a somatic movement therapist. Now, I met her last fall when she invited me to her body story workshop, and it was a lovely afternoon. We spent a few hours journaling a little bit and then doing some movement, and I just thought it was incredible. So I've been following her since, and thought that you should meet her as well. So Odelia, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. It's great to
Yeah. So, first question, what is somatic movement therapy? It was something I'd never come across until I met you.
Right. Um, yeah. So let's start with the word somatic. What does that mean? Somatic means relating to the body. And there's a way in our culture that we tend to separate, in our culture, meaning in the Western culture, that we tend to separate between the mind and the body. So if you're having some emotional problems or mental issues, you go to a therapist and you talk about them, and uh, you know, that's what a lot of people do. They go to a therapist and maybe deal with those issues through cognitive tools. Or if you have a physical issue, you go to a doctor, and the doctor is trying to find out what's wrong physically and kind of isolating uh, whatever area in your body that is, malfunctioning or whatever. So, me and other people who are somatic therapists propose that maybe there's a way to combine both in the healing process, because we are not separate things. We're one thing, and it's good to look at ourselves as a whole. So in my work, that's kind of what I do. If someone comes to me with any issue, I try to look at it from both the physical perspective and also the mental, uh, the emotional, the spiritual. And I use the body. Somatic therapy means basically body based therapy. I use the body a lot as a reference. Um, and uh, and that helps people kind of integrate all their different parts and feel themselves as a whole, as an embodied um, being. And um, the idea is that uh, trauma, which can be big or small, we are used to thinking about trauma as maybe like a big life shattering event, but um, but it doesn't have to be so. Little things can be experienced as trauma as well. Anything can be experienced as trauma. Um, and the idea is that it gets recorded in the body. And so there's a way that in a lot of, other ways of treating trauma, we are bypassing the body. We're trying to bypass the body. And I feel like there's no real healing that can occur without including the body and, what gets recorded in the body in the healing process. Um, so what that means is that we kind of train ourselves uh, in sensing and feeling, which is something that, especially when we talk about diet culture and our relationship to our bodies, a lot of us are disconnected from our bodies and from our ability to do that, to sense and feel into our body. So it's something that we need to train in just as much as we need to train when we go to the gym if we want to, strengthen a muscle. And when you have a safe environment to do that, then we can allow ourselves gradually to um, kind of widen our awareness to the places of discomfort. And um, we use we work with the nervous system to kind of be able to do that so that we can um, feel the places in the body that hold the trauma and let it move through us and let it release. And um, yeah, so this is in general what somatic uh, therapy is. And uh, when we think about um, when we think about body acceptance and body shame, it's just one more way that we get traumatized. So the messages that we hear from the culture, from the people around us about our bodies are damaging because we don't come into the world thinking that we are less than, perfect in a way. We are whole. And then we get all these messages that there's something wrong with us, and they get recorded in the body. So in somatic therapy, we just work on, you know, we can work on this specific kind of trauma by including the body and asking it questions directly and seeing what arises, what sensations, what emotions are attached to all these messages, and allowing ourselves to process them through the body.
I can think of so many of my patients that I work with, especially with the intuitive eating, and we're asking them to tune into their bodies and to hear their signals. And they have no idea because they've spent so much time trying to ignore their feelings, ignore the sensations in their body. Their body is saying, stop, this kind of movement hurts, or I'm hungry, please feed me. And we ignore it for decades, many of the women I work with, anyways. Um, so I'm thinking about them as you're speaking. And I'm also thinking about the people who aren't very articulate with how they're feeling. And so talk therapy is not, it's not productive for them because they're unable to identify how they're feeling. So I'm wondering, are those the kinds of people that could benefit from your type of therapy?
Yeah, totally. And sometimes um, feelings can come to us in the form of sensations. So we don't know, and we don't need to try to explain in words, to put words into what we feel. We can just tune into the sensations that come up and kind of locate them in the body, and then just kind of let the body do whatever it needs to do with those sensations, and just make a lot of space for that. And my um, way of working with that is that I really don't try to stop anything that the body is trying to express, because I think that it's very important and it's part of the healing process, um, to let the body, do its thing. And oftentimes, when we do have reactions in our bodies, um, you know, a lot of people don't know what to do with that and get a little worried that maybe there's something wrong. But uh, I believe that those are the kind of things that happen to us. Like, for example, if we think about something that's scary, we might start shaking. And that's something that I just want to make a lot of room for. If someone starts, shaking, we just kind of stay with it, just kind of like with meditation practice, where you have a thought, or you have a sensation, or you have a feeling. You try to kind of bring a lot of breath into it and expand your awareness and your capacity to just sit with it and let it live in the body, rather than just trying to analyze it, move on to trying to figure. A lot of times we try to figure stuff out. We think we have a problem and we have to figure it out in our head, where like what really is going on is that our body needs to have space and time to process the trauma. So um, yeah, a lot can happen through the body without having to put words to things. Um, and words are important, but they're not the main thing. They're like a means to get into the body, or to maybe explain or express things that are happening in the body.
Hmm. A space to feel the feels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, we're always distracting from our feels.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
interesting. Now, how did you come to this work?
Well, particularly, so I see what I do as a combination of two things that I kind of put together. So the one part of it is the whole um, healing through the body, through embodied practices and uh, somatic work, which I've been doing for years, and it's kind of um, my part of my own healing journey. I always kind of reverted to this kind of work to heal myself. Um, and and then the body acceptance piece um, is also probably something that I carry for many years, but um, my more recent journey around it is kind of what led me to combine those two things. And I, you know, like many others, suffered from an eating disorder when I was younger. And um, I, I didn't think that I had any, um, special issues with food and eating, after I finished, the the therapy work that had to do with that specific thing. I've been in therapy throughout my life, but when I was younger and I had the eating disorder, I had a therapist and we worked on that. And I thought that I moved on, but um, you know, I had issues with my body, and um, I suffered from disordered eating and yo-yo dieting until, at one point I lost a lot of weight. And, like many other um, women, I just realized that I can't keep doing that anymore, because I lost all this weight and I don't know what to do now, because I'm starving myself. I'm completely obsessed with what to eat, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do to even just like keep my weight. So I started by seeking help from a professional, and just thinking about how do I maintain this without starving myself. But then I happened to um, work with an intuitive eating dietitian, and she introduced a lot of the intuitive eating concepts into my life, and it made a lot of sense. And as I was working on my issues, and as I was educating myself in intuitive eating, and I was reading the book and all of that, I realized that so much of what we are talking about in intuitive eating has to do with somatics, the whole thing about interoceptive awareness, and um, training ourselves to go into the body and notice our cues, um, that so that we can really know and connect to when we're hungry, when we're full, And this is all somatics, and this is all what I've been practicing. And I think that my own practice was what enabled me to move so quickly through that like phase of my healing, because I also saw the connection between the idea that um, acceptance um, has a lot to do with coming to terms that with like the idea that what matters is not necessarily how we look, but how we feel. And how we feel is just so much like an inside job, and it has nothing to do with what other people think about us or how we think other people think of us, so about us. So um, and sensing and feeling is so much part of somatics, and it just kind of widens your perspective about what your body um, can do, and also how much pleasure you can derive from just being in your body, and um, just kind of like tasting from this like endless buffet of sensations, and just the movement, for example, movement is can be such a pleasurable experience if you allow yourself to just notice what your body's doing. um, and it's there. You don't need to do anything. It's just there and it's available for you. And so that's another way that like those two things kind of um, combined for me. And then there's the other piece about joyful movement, which is connected to what I just said, but is also connected to another part of my work that I also engage in and offer to people, joyful movement classes, which are body inclusive, flow based, kind of semi-structured um, movement experiences that people can just come and let loose and enjoy uh, their body moving, and on the way without noticing, they they get a good workout because the body is moving, but from a place of pleasure, rather than you know um,
Punishment.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the word.
I think
Pressure.
that's so incredibly important because so many of the people I work with, because diet and fitness have been so intertwined with weight loss and body sculpting for so long that it can be really difficult. And in fact, I almost found it more difficult to come back to movement than I did to practicing intuitive eating and finding the pleasure in food again, because of how quickly my mind would take over instead of letting my body decide what we needed to do and how to do it and all of those things. Um, so I'm interested and curious about how powerful that could be for people who are wanting to move again, but not wanting to go back to traditional movement.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that can be very powerful, because in these kinds of experiences, I know at least like in my class, I encourage people to really listen. And even if I offer movements, like what I offer is kind of like a suggestion, and people get to take what I offer and try it on and see how they want to play with it, and how they want to um, how they want to do their own version of what I'm offering. So if I'm moving fast or if I'm moving like big, you can always honor your kind of inner voice, your energy level, and make it a recuperative experience for you. And I think it helps. Like, one little trick is that I put a lot of energy into music because I feel like that has, first of all, that has a healing power
Oh,
of
yeah.
its own. And then there's a way that it comes in through our senses also, and it kind of enhances the experience of pleasure. So if you can let the music kind of move you almost, um, it's like you're getting um, some kind of like a power boost from something that's, external, that you're bringing it into your body, and you don't need to work so hard because you're just enjoying yourself. And when you're enjoying yourself, it's like, I think about, children, and how when no one is telling them to move, they just move. They dance all the time, and you see them jumping just, to get from point A to point B. If they have to, if they can choose walking or, prancing or skipping, they might choose skipping, and it just comes from inside. It's Nobody's telling them to do that. And at some point um, we quiet this all down. And part of it has to do, like a big part of it has to do with diet culture. And with diet culture telling us that unless you're moving your body for a specific purpose that is external, like running calories or um, I don't know, getting in shape, then there's no point in in doing
Yeah,
any.
it doesn't count stuff,
Right.
right? Yeah.
And it takes all the fun out of movement, and movement is supposed to be joyful. Um, it's one of the pleasures in life, just as much as eating. So you're right. It's a challenge to kind of heal our relationship with movement, um, in the same way, and maybe even more than, healing our relationship with food, because it's been messed with, and
Deeply.
we've been
Yeah.
taken we've been robbed uh, of, one of the biggest joys. And we also have been robbed of a way to stay healthy, because it is one of the ways to that one of the determinants of health, is movement. And we don't need to be rigid about it, but it's important. It's an important piece, and not to mention, our mental health. Also, I think a lot of our mental health comes from movement, and a lot of the ways that we can release tension from our body, um, is through movement. So,
The authors, the Nagoski sisters, in their book Burnout, they talk about completing the stress cycle, and that exercise is one of the very best ways to do that, to let those stress hormones move through our body the way that they're meant to, so that then we can deal with the actual stress, or the stressors in our lives. Um,
mhm,
and so, yeah, it's a
yeah,
very powerful tool, and yet it's so weighed down, by diet culture and all of the expectations that we have of what our body should look like, and that it's supposed to result in this particular kind of body sculpting or whatever else comes out of it, instead of just really allowing that experience to happen.
yeah,
I just did want to mention, because lots of people that I speak with say, um, they're encouraged, but do your own thing. But one of the things I did notice when I took your class, the joyful movement class, was that people really did just use what you said as a suggestion. And if I did look at the screen with all the different people, we were all doing different things, with a similar kind of theme and base movement maybe, but it was really beautiful to watch
hmm,
and to be part of. But sometimes people say, oh, do the modification, it's okay. But people don't do the modification because they don't want to look like they're not
Mhm.
keeping up.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't present in your class. It was really
Mm.
lovely.
Great. That's a great feedback to have because it's exactly what I want to happen. And I think that one of the advantages of doing online classes is that people feel, less self-conscious
Mm.
when it comes to doing their own thing, um, because they're in their own space. So psychologically, they feel like they're less maybe being looked at.
Yeah.
And also, people can always turn their cameras off, which is also an added benefit of doing online classes. That um, if you're having a day where you feel like, you really need to keep it to yourself in order to not experience all the shame,
Yeah.
then you can definitely do that. Um, and it's a great option to have. Although when I teach the classes in person, I also make it a point to not have mirrors or to cover the mirrors, um, because I want it to be such an internal experience, and it really doesn't matter how you look. And a lot of people tell me that, they never took a movement class before, they never danced before, and they feel like they're beautiful dancers. They feel um, like whatever they're putting out there because it's coming from the inside, and maybe because of the permission to be really connected and expressive and do what your body's telling you to do, and they feel um, very different than they expected. They're surprised. A lot of people um, are surprised by the results.
Yeah. 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 The mirror thing is an interesting and important piece, right? Because we do get distracted by our reflection because we're so inundated with thoughts about how we're supposed to appear.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Hmm.
I can definitely see that as an important piece.
I have to tell you that I also struggled myself. I could see how diet culture's messages affected me as an instructor because once I decided to let go of all my dieting behaviors, my body did change. I was much thinner than I am today. And I love dancing, I love moving. And at some point, I felt like, should I be teaching? If I look the way I look, if I'm not in shape, if I don't look like, you know, all these other people that are um, calling themselves dance movement instructors. And I struggled with that a lot. And then I realized that, this is probably what's going to make people feel more comfortable dancing with me if their bodies are not the typical bodies, uh, you know, uh, promoted in this culture.
Yeah, for sure. I went through the same thing in my early days of my career, thinking that I didn't look the part of the naturopath and that I should be a different size, a different shape, a different whatever. Um, and I'm told very regularly by my patients that that is one of the reasons why they're comfortable with me is because I know what it is to be in a body that isn't what is the typical one. And anyways, it's that whole thing of representation and that we want to see ourselves, and I think you and I are both what an average size woman in North America actually is, and yet we're very rarely seen in media. So
Mhm,
it's very refreshing for people to see us
mhm,
living our best lives and doing the things that bring about health and bring about joy and bring about living life to the fullest in the body that we're in instead of waiting for that magical size or number to appear that suddenly you get the green light. Okay, now you can be happy. Um, yeah, Yeah, it's beautiful. So thank you, because it's hard to find. It's getting easier because there's more of us stepping into this space, but it is very difficult um, to find people that look like we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
If there was just one thing that you could tell your younger self, or tell your children, or just our audience, if there was one little nugget, what would that be?
It takes me back to, you know, there's often when we think about our journeys, there are often like, the diet culture messages come from different directions and in different times of our lives. But for me, there's a moment that I remember that someone commented on my body that that's what I remember made me kind of turn on myself and start my, um, you know, abusive relationship with my body. And if I only had someone there to tell me that, this is nonsense, just, clear and simple. This is nonsense. I think that my life would have been very different. And I didn't have that. Um, I didn't have that, but I think that I am becoming that person to myself. And that has been possible through a lot of work. um, and, you know, where I am today is very different than where I was when I was in that situation. And um, a lot of it has to do uh, thanks to all the practices, all the um healing work that I've done. So there's no magic, there's no magic pill for this, and it does require a lot of work. And there are days where we feel better, and there are days where we feel worse. But overall, I think that we all can have a better experience of ourselves. But it takes work. So just knowing that, and normalizing that, and uh, knowing that we're all in this together. Yeah.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, of just normalizing that, while you're developing body confidence, while you're developing intuitive eating skills, there are days when that confidence is just not there. And that doesn't mean that you're failing, it just means you're having a day. And that's part of the journey, and it's 100% okay.
Yeah, and it means that those messages are brutal, and they're doing their um you know yeah, they're taking their toll on
Yeah.
us. So
Now, I know that you do the, I'm trying to remember what it was called, the first workshop I did with you. I think it was a body acceptance workshop, or body love or something.
body
Body
story workshop.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then you have your joyful movement classes, and then
that's
you
right.
have your one-on-one therapy. Is there anything else that you offer?
I also offer a more extensive program that is that has like five parts, and it includes both group work and one-on-one work, and it's called Healing the Whole. And I offer it periodically, uh, once every few months, and that's another way that people can work with me. But yeah, this is basically it.
Amazing. And we're gonna put all of your how to get hold of you, bits in the show notes, but embodied acceptance is your handle and your website.
Right.
Perfect. And if for people who prefer in person, where are you doing in person things?
So I can do that through Zoom, and in person in New Jersey, northern New Jersey.
Okay.
I live in Tenafly, and I have my studio in Tenafly, so people can come to me if they want to do in-person work.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for spending some time and just speaking more about what it is that you do. As soon as I met you, I thought, ah, this is a nice missing piece. There's lots of people doing um, body positive fitness and they're doing incredible stuff. And it's still very much the same kind of movements. And for some people, that is just not safe while they're reconnecting with their body.
Mm.
So I thought this was just a beautiful addition or alternative way for people to, like you said, practice that interoceptive. I never get that word right. Can't even spell it right. Um, but just to tune into their bodies and to listen and strengthen those skills that are so needed for intuitive eating and intuitive living.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. And
Awesome.
I'm sure we'll just stay connected.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.